Okay, g'day, scholars. Just a reminder, my name's Dr. LJ Ma. I'm one of your teachers for this semester. And what was I doing? Oh, um, I just wanted to create this little video to share some resources with you that you might find useful going forward this semester, and also to make sure you understand how to use the books that we have set for this semester, because this often gets a little bit confusing. Okay. So, legal ethics is a big subject. And part of my approach to teaching it is that I'm not just going to teach you the legislation and the case law. I mean, that is great for wanting to get through the exam. And yes, that is necessary for that component. So it is a significant part of what we look at. But of course, assessments one and two are actually related more to policy and questions of the impact of lawyers' ethics, the way it operates within our society. So I do tend to take a little bit more of a holistic approach to teaching lawyers' ethics, which means that I touch on questions of the history of ethics and what ethics actually are and different styles of ethical practice. I think about historical context, political and economic context, those shifts as and when they arise, as well as bringing in general theories of sociology so that we can understand how it is that the laws that we are working with actually impact on the society in which we're operating and are impacted by the society in which we live. And this gives us a more grounded approach to understanding, interpreting, and also challenging those rules when we think they're being ineffective. So that's the sort of basis for where we're going. And as part of getting you ready for some of these discussions, I want to introduce you to some useful resources and talk you through what I think is a really useful way to engage with them. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Legal Ethics and Professionalism in Australia. This is the textbook that we have set for this subject. Excuse me a second. So this is the one that you want to make sure you have. Um, it is available through the library as an ebook, but do bear in mind that, as I said in my previous video, there are limited licenses, so you aren't guaranteed to get access to it. We're working with the 2020 edition, okay, which is the third edition of this book. The reason for this is that we tend to find that this book, it's not a particularly thick one, that yay big, and it's a really, really good summary of what the law is in plain language. Okay, so this is the starting point. This is the one where you have to make sure you've read it each week. But there are two other books that are on the reading list, and they're put down as recommended books, but it doesn't actually quite work that way. So the first one of those is this one here. It's the Ebejer Legal Practice and Ethics. This is the fourth edition. And as you can see, this is from 2022. So this book is very, very similar to the Barron and Corbin in its tone and effect. Okay, so not particularly thick, very plain language. It does have information that's a little bit more up to date post 2020. So this is particularly relevant when we're looking at questions of confidentiality, because of course the Nicola Gobbo case was in late 2020. And that was a whole ride to do with the rule of confidentiality. So this textbook will have a little bit more detail on confidentiality, and that's very much when I'd suggest that you turn to this one for a little bit of extra context. Again, it should be available from the library as an ebook as well. Now, the other book that we have set is this bad boy, Gino Del Pont's Professional Responsibility, and it's a seventh edition. So again, this is the 2020 edition. I think that's the most up-to-date one. I don't think we have or maybe we do have an eighth edition now. Hold on a second. Hold on just a second. We're going to do a little search. Let's see if Booktopia. No, the 2021 is the one that we're working with. That's good. This is the most up-to-date one. Nice. Booktopia's got some money off that one. Now, this one's really important, but it is only set as a recommended text, okay? So this is what we call a case book. This is one of those chunky boys that's like yay thick, okay? So it's one of those ones that you end up using to prop up your coffee table. However, again, available as an ebook through the library. This casebook is invaluable. The reason we don't have it set as a required resource is because Del Pont's writing is a lot more dense and convoluted. He's not engaging in as much plain English legal writing. Okay, so that's why we prefer the Baron and Corbin. However, Gino Del Pont is the god of lawyers' ethics in Australia. Okay, like basically, if Del Pont has written it in a journal article or in one of his textbooks, you'd be a really brave judge to contradict him, right? I know that usually scholarship is only a secondary resource when we're looking at decision making, but when it comes to lawyers' ethics, as the expert, like the guy in this field, he will be deferred to. Okay. So that's why his casebook is such a valuable resource. And what that means is I would absolutely, if I were you, make sure that I'm engaging with the casebook and particularly taking notes on the cases. So you'll see in the lectures, for example, in the lecture slides, in the notes section down the bottom, that Tamsin has often included the case names of cases that aren't mentioned in the body of the slide. And the details for those cases, you're generally going to find them in this bad boy here. Okay, so when you are filling out your exam notes for the end of the semester, this is the one that you really want to be making use of because it will absolutely give you the grounding you need in case law. I hope that is comprehensible for everybody. I would say it's not necessarily one that you need to purchase. I would engage with this one through the library, okay? However, I would be engaging with it on a week-by-week basis in order to make sure that my case notes are up to date, okay? And the reason for this is that within this subject, at the last count, I think we were touching on some 397 cases throughout the course of lawyers' ethics. So there are a lot of cases that we're talking about. Some are definitely more influential than others, and you'll see that there's some cases that are repeatedly used. But I do want to stress that you absolutely want to make sure that you are engaging with this textbook in some form or another, at the very least to make sure that you have the details of cases in your exam notes. Now, I do have a few other books here that are useful for you. This textbook was only just released, okay? So this is released 2023. I think it came out in there we go, 12th of November. Okay, so that's why this one isn't on the reading list, isn't on the textbook lists, because it literally, this latest edition was just published. Now, Parker and Evans are classics in the field of legal ethics. Oh, sorry, this is yeah, it's Parker and Evans. This edition has been put together by Holmes and Bartlett. Evans has just retired, and I have no idea what Catherine Parker's up to at the moment. However, here's a hot little tip, okay? For assessments 1 and 2, you are not able to rely on these 3 textbooks as resources for those assessments. So you can use them as a starting point. You can go into these and mine them for resources and then go to those other resources that these books have guided you to and use those other resources. But we do not want to see these appearing in assessment 1 or 2. And the reason for that is we are trying to stretch your research skills. Makes sense, right? But you can make use of this one. You're welcome. So hopefully that's a little bit of help for you. And as I said, because this is a really contemporary edition, I haven't even had a chance to read it yet because I've been in the marking cave of doom since it was published. But I am really excited about this one, particularly this chapter here, the new chapter, chapter 10, Lawyers' Ethics in the Anthropocene. So the Anthropocene means the world when we center it around humans. And we kind of use this term, the Anthropocene, as a way of talking about the impact of environmental change. What happens when we center humans in the world instead of thinking about humans in relation to the environment and other animals with which they live. So, this question of legal ethics and environmental responsibility is a fascinating one. And I'm really excited to read that type of, or this particular engagement. Another resource that you might find useful is this one by Adrian Evans. Again, this was just published at the start of the year, and it's called The Good Chinese Lawyer. So Evans is a legal scholar. He was based at Monash University. He is the Evans of Parker and Evans, of course. And this particular text is a really, really interesting one for those practical tips and tips and tricks. That's where we were going. Now, I know it is focusing particularly on questions of legal practice within Chinese cultural frameworks. For some of you, that might be extremely damn useful. For others amongst you, it might just be really, really interesting. However, I do think that this is absolutely a useful one to pick up. And Adrian Evans is such an amazing researcher. So again, he'd be a name that I would put on my research articles by this guy list for the purposes of answering my essay question. Okay. Now that then brings me into that question of research for your ethics question. And of course, we all know that we're going to generally drift towards Lexis Advance, and you guys have been trained in how to use that in MLJ720. I want to just show you a little bit about Hein Online, okay? So Hein Online is the journal database that is generally really, really good for legal studies. It is going to be focused on American journals, so that is worth bearing in mind. But of course, you are able to talk about legal ethics within the United States, within other jurisdictions. It's just that you need to think about how would that translate into an Australian context? Because, of course, the United States legal jurisdiction is kind of like a tortoise, and Australia's legal jurisdiction is kind of like a turtle, right? They look very similar from a distance, but when you get up close, they're radically different animals. And if you put a tortoise where a turtle's supposed to live, I just want you to think for a moment about what happens when tortoises are in a turtle environment. It's not great for the tortoise. So let me just show you a couple of things with Hein that I think are really great. There we go. So I'm going to access this through my university. I've got Deakin University there. Get that login. I'm going to do my sign in. And do I need my dual factor authentication, or is that, yeah, we've got to get that dual factor going on. There we go. So once we complete those steps, yay, we have access to Hein. Okay, so let me just show you a quick search. We'll have a look at what this is. So we're going to go legal, ethics, Australia, and then I'm going to chuck a specific issue in there just to make it interesting. Let's see if we can find something for Anthropocene. Okay. So there are my search terms that I'm trying to bring up. Beautiful. We got 442 resources here. So what we can see, okay, we've got some cool articles that are coming up that might be useful for me. Oh, this one looks really interesting. I'm going to jump into this one here, Sovereignty in the Anthropocene. Okay, so we can see this is coming from the Griffith Law Review. We can listen to the article if you want. It's got the audio component there, which is really useful. Citation details are here so that you can move those across. So you can just tap on cite and input those into a particular research management tool if you're using one. I happen to use Zotero, and there is a video on how to use Zotero on the assessments page. Otherwise, you've just got a general citation here. You do need to make sure, however, that this citation is going to be AGLC4 compliant. Okay, so what we can see here, we can see that this particular article isn't currently available on Hind. Oh, controversial. So let's just jump through to TNF. We can see, again, I've got my access provided by Deakin University here. I'm going to go down here and go sovereignty in the Anthropocene and copy that. Paste it there and then do a quick search. There we go. Let's jump into the full text. Beautiful. So I've got the full article here, which I can read online. I can also download the PDF if I need to, or view it as an EPUB instead. One thing that I find really useful here is I can see other articles that might be similar. I can also see if there are any articles who have referred to this article. And if people have read this article, they might also have read this one here. So that's nice, useful to know. If we're going back across to here, we can see other articles that are available here. Ooh, let's open up Tegan's one because that looks like an interesting one. So we've got Tegan's orchid here. So an orchid is like academics get them. They're basically our scanning ID. All of our research gets allocated to our orchid code. So we can see, like, theoretically, this orchid code belongs to this person, and we can see all of this. And that is it Tegan Evans? That's an interesting question for us. Okay, we can see the articles that we've got here. Okay, again, it's linked us through to Taylor and Francis. Okay, so let's go back to here. And we're going to go, what I do want to show you what it does in Hind Online. Let's go with a nice easy one. Okay, great. So here's an article. This is from Adrian Evans. So he's the guy that wrote our textbook, Parker and Evans, and Ethics in Chinese Lawyers. Co-author, Josephine Palermo. And this is a bit of an older bit of research, 2006, but it actually hasn't been repeated since. So this is the most up-to-date version of this particular piece of research there is. Literally a conversation I had with Adrian last week. I would like to get some funding to redo this research in light of changing legal circumstances. Okay, so what we can see here, we've got other articles that appear in that particular edition of the journal, okay, of the Deakin Law Review. So you can see if there is anything useful there. Again, you can download, you can see the PDF, you can email it, get the citation. And we're just going to click on more like this. And the reason that we're doing this is so that it can bring up other articles that might be talking about similar questions. Okay, so there's our article, the one that we came from up the top there. Other articles that might be talking about similar questions. And that then enables us to bring together a whole bunch of resources really, really quickly that might be useful for the question that we're trying to research. Okay. So I'm going to give you another example to show you that at work. This is one that I'm doing at the moment, believe it or not. Got to get my paper ready for the Swift Posium in February. And here we go. We can see that there's a whole bunch of stuff here, mostly to do with Taylor Swift. And, oh, this one could be useful for me. Taylor Swift and intellectual property. The thing that I'm actually talking about is her use of revenge as a motif in some of her music. So particularly off the new album Midnights, I'm looking at like vigilante shit. Oh, and this is about Midnights. Fantastic. So this is very relevant for me. So I am going to hit that little more like this button. And then I can add these to my Zotero. Yay! No, dealing with the Slayer rule, that's not going to be as necessary in Australia. But as you can see, this is where we can sort of start to bring in some of these ideas. If I want to get rid of the concept of Slayer, because that's going to bring up stuff that's very much related to a particular law in the US that isn't going to be as useful for me. Then I can see that this actually then brings me into more sort of Taylor Swift type stuff. Mostly still to do with copyright. Don't get me wrong. I love intellectual property, but this isn't quite where I want to go with mine. Still really interesting though. And as you can see, there's some really interesting discussions happening there. Cool, 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 cool. All right. So I just wanted to show you that little capability with Hein Online. The other one that is really useful for this as a research tool is JSTOR. Okay. Now, JSTOR tends to be more related to the humanities, but it does still do a bit of legal stuff. So again, we are going to find my institution, Deakin University. You can access these through the library site, of course. I just find it quicker to do it this way. So again, law, ethics, Australia, Gobbo. Gibbo is not what we were going for there. Bit of an older article here. Let's try legal ethics. Oh, this looks like an interesting one. The managerial law firm and the globalization of legal ethics. That could be an interesting one. It's from 2009. So it's a little bit older, but it might be one that's got some interesting information in it. And what I do want to do is show you some slightly different things at work here as well. Okay, so again, we've got the details of this text. We can get the citation. We can download the article itself. Delightful. We can also see we've got related texts down here, which can be useful and again, shorten some of our research. But we can see that some of these are a bit older, right? The Future of Legal Ethics, Ethics and Professionalism from 1970. That can be good for getting an historical context. But is it still going to be relevant? Like there was no such thing as sexual harassment in the workplace in 1970. So I'd be hesitant about that. Again, we can see this one here from Christine Parker's a really lovely one. We love Christine's work. And there we go. So that's looking good. Now, oh, pause. Excuse me a second. Okay, let's try that again. Beautiful. So we've got some really great resources that we're going to play with here. We can get rid of that one. We can get rid of that one. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Now, part of what I do each week is I ask you guys to locate news stories that contextualize part of what we're talking about in legal ethics, right? I want you to keep an eye in the news for stories around lawyers behaving badly. Part of the reason for this is that I find that once you start studying legal ethics, you see the issues coming up everywhere. And I think it's really, really both useful and also important to look at what the practical application of what we're studying is. Like, it's one thing to look at cases from the 1800s or even from 2020. It's another thing entirely to look at, well, how does this happen in the day-to-day? How do people who probably should know better, and like they got them through a law degree, right? They're not complete idiots. How is it that they find themselves in these weird situations where they're trying to figure stuff out? And honestly, a lot of the time it's just because balancing ethical interests is genuinely a difficult thing to do. It's not as cut and dry as we like to think it is. And in the grand tradition of studying law, whenever you are asking, is this the ethical thing to do? The answer will always be, it depends. Don't you love that? It depends. Every lawyer's favorite answer. Okay. So Lawyers Weekly is basically like a new idea, but for lawyers. Just generate yourself a little login, okay, like with your throwaway Gmail account. The one that you use to get 10% off the first time that you sign into something, but you don't actually use that account for anything else. And that will get you access to the site without having to deal with limited article readings. Okay. So if we go to the home, you can see here, it basically gives us the news of what's been happening in the legal world. Everything from branding, new judicial office appointments. At the end of each week, they tend to give a what's hot little summary, which is really useful. So you can sort of click into that and get links through to recent articles. So for example, the first one here looks like a really interesting one. An inappropriate decision to prepare a will for a member of his own family more than a decade ago has caught up with a New South Wales solicitor. Oh, beautiful. Here, we've got a gorgeous little article that's going to fit in perfectly with our discussion about Rule 3.1, your duty to the administration of justice, and also to Rule 12, duty and interest conflicts. So the solicitor's personal interest conflicting with their duty, either to the court or to their client. Okay, so here's a gorgeous little one of that. That could be an interesting one to look into. The other thing that I really like about Lawyers Weekly, okay, so you've got these different sections. Big Law tends to deal with what it says on the tin, right? This is where we're looking at the questions that arise with some of the really large law firms, as well as some of the big decisions that have come down. That High Court decision on unsafe housing in the Northern Territory is going to be huge, particularly for slumlords, because I don't know if any of y'all are renting, but oh, my current place, fantastic. Love my landlords. The place I was in for 10 years before this, oh. So it's really useful to see what's actually coming up in terms of general discussions. They've got their section, the bar. Okay, so this is where you're going to find interesting information on what is happening that's useful for the bar to think about. This case here from Queensland is fascinating. Have a read through. New silks in Victoria. This is always a nice little bit of gossip, like seeing, okay, who's gotten silk. Click on that little link there. Who have we got? Richard O'Keefe. Yep. Okay. So far, these are not people I know, but yay for them. Gorgeous. Oh, these are all Sydney-based ones too, from the looks of it. So I'm not going to know any of them anyway because I'm not from Sydney. So I'm not worried about that. Excellent. We've got corporate counsel. Okay, this is a really good one if you are thinking about becoming an in-house lawyer. Okay, so these are really, really interesting articles here. They also do podcasts as well. Okay, so you've got a really nice little range of material that you can engage with here. This guy here actually runs a really great TikTok dealing with tax law, where he doesn't provide advice, but he talks about what it is to practice in a tax law context. He's quite good. I follow him on the TikTok. And this delightful young lady has done a lot of work. Annabelle Biscotto has done a lot of work to do with neurodivergence and the legal industry. So what happens with those of us who are a little bit neurospicy? Hi to all of my ADHD girlies out there. So I do recommend having a login to this, have a look around, and each week come into the seminar with an article or a resource that you found. It doesn't have to be necessarily from that week, but relatively recent, that you think is on point for what we've been talking about. Okay? And this will help you to situate what we're studying within a lived and real experience. Okay. That one just looked like an interesting book, and I want to read it, which is why it's sitting there. So I won't get rid of that one. And finally, I want to direct you to a couple of scholarly associations to do with legal ethics. So the first of these is an international one. This is the International Association of Legal Ethics, okay? So you can see here they've got links through to their previous conferences, the one that's coming up next year, which I need to try and get an abstract in for. Because I do want to go to Amsterdam. You can see what's been discussed recently. 2020, there was obviously the hiatus. In 2021, because travel was a difficulty. Lawyers in a world of crisis. And open. Hello. Look at this video recording. Video recording of all of these papers. Are you as excited as I am? I'm very excited. I will be revisiting this to watch some of those while I am procrastinating from marking my assessments for journalism. The other one is an Australian-based organisation. So this is Law, Literature and Humanities Association of Australia. So the conference here is coming up in Queensland. I will be presenting at this one, talking about justice as a concept and looking at science fiction, because I'm a literature person as well as a law person. So this is a really great organization, and they deal with this lovely intersection of culture with law, which is absolutely important, because when we're dealing with our clients, most of our clients only really understand or know about the law through their engagement with popular culture. And usually it's through American popular culture. So they're not great with knowing what to look for in terms of what law actually is. But these sorts of resources are also useful because, once again, these individuals are scholars who might be really, really useful for you to look into their research if it looks like they're doing something that's on point for you. Justine, for example, is an amazing poet. So she tends to work at the intersection of poetry and law. Sean is a theatre maker. That's his background, as well as legal, obviously. And so he brings together the idea of law and performance really, really beautifully in his work. James Stewart, IP-ish from memory, and international law-ish, an absolute champion of a human. So we've got some really, really lovely setups here. And again, access to past conferences. And not all conferences will be recorded, but you can also then see like what the abstracts are, what the materials are that were presented on. Okay, so you can see here what people were talking about. And there'll be, the reason why this is so long is because once you get through the timetable, here we go. There's a bit of a bio on these different scholars and their papers. Okay, and so again, this can be a really useful way of finding resources that are useful for your thesis, because even if you can't get to this exact conference paper, you can search out the scholar themselves, okay, and have a look for other research that they may have done that you might find interesting. Okay, so that just brings me to the end of this little one. I hope this talk through of resources has been really useful. Hoping that worked. That's the end of this little video. I hope that my chat through of some of these resources has been useful for you. If you have questions, concerns, and queries, pop them in the discussion board. I will be jumping in and out of there throughout the week. And otherwise, I look forward to meeting you, some of you at least, tomorrow night. Otherwise, those of you who can't make it tomorrow night, on Tuesday night, you can join in with Adrian on Andrew. Getting my scholars mixed up. You can join in with Andrew on Wednesday. We're actually running 2 seminars for this subject. They're going to be the same, but the idea is that it gives you a greater opportunity to actually engage in that face-to-face catch-up with your peers and colleagues. Because I do want to stress that face-to-face catch-up is so important. The law is not just about what you know, it's always about who you know. And developing those relationships with your future peers, it's invaluable. It also makes studying a hell of a lot more pleasant. So I look forward to seeing you either Tuesday night or Wednesday. And I hope that you have a great semester.